Hello again, this is Rod from Golden Prairie Community Church. Have you ever wondered if God could relate to you as a kid? Would he understand what it means to grow up? What it means to be misunderstood? What it means to have to obey parents? Well, Jesus did exactly that. He did all those things. You see, Jesus grew up about 2,000 years ago, and although the world was really different at that point, there was no computers, no cars, no video games, no vehicles, quads, computers, air conditioning. But the family was still a family, and people related to each other in the same way. Things in some ways weren't really that different. Last week we talked about Jesus being born. He started off the same way you and I did, being born and having to grow up. Well, now we're going to pick up a story where he's 12 years old, a time when his parents are trusting him, giving him responsibility. And let's see what happened to him. Now, Jesus lived in the town of Nazareth, which is about 100 kilometers north of the capital city of Israel, the city of Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem was the center of religious worship for the people of Israel. It was the place where you had to go to do certain things. And 3 times a year, everybody was supposed to go down to Jerusalem, or up, depending where they were coming from, and be there for 3 different kind of events, festivals, feasts. And so they would walk to Jerusalem to attend these various religious celebrations. In our story today, Jesus and his family are walking from Nazareth down to Jerusalem to attend a celebration called the Passover Festival. And we're going to pick up in Luke chapter 2 and read verses 41 to 51. Every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. When Jesus was 12 years old, they attended the festival as usual. After the celebration was over, they started home to Nazareth, but Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents didn't miss him at first because they assumed he was among the other travelers. But when he didn't show up that evening, they started looking for him among their relatives and friends. When they couldn't find him, they went back to Jerusalem to search for him there. Now, like I said, the people were walking back and forth, traveling as a group and walking. How would you like to have been walking 100 kilometers or more? That'd be like going to Medicine Hat from Golden Prairie. It's kind of a long ways, but it's what they did. They had to do that in those days. Now, Jesus' parents trusted him. They thought that he was walking just with his friends. No, they really didn't miss him at first. It doesn't tell us why Jesus stayed in Jerusalem yet. Why do you think he stayed there? What do you think? Now, if you did this and just disappeared like that, how would your parents react? I know how my parents would react. They'd have been pretty upset. Well, let's see what happened, what his parents did. It says in verse 46, 3 days later, remember they had already gone back to Jerusalem. 3 days later, they finally discovered him in the temple, sitting among the religious teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. All who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. But his parents didn't know what to think. Son, his mother said to him, why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been frantic, searching everywhere for you. Would your parents be frantic too? I bet they would be. I know mine would be. They'd be glad to see me, but boy, would they be mad. Oh, and by the way, how was your guess about what he would have been doing there? He wasn't visiting the sites. He was talking to religious leaders? What's with that? Now, the temple was a big building where people gathered to worship God. And Jesus was sitting, listening to the people who taught religious things. And he was listening to them as well as asking them questions. And they were amazed at the things he was asking and saying to them. Imagine, he'd been there 4 days at least, maybe even 5. Where did he sleep? What did he eat? And why was he talking to these guys? What would be the interest? But remember who he is. Jesus was God's Son. He was God the Son who had become human. Jesus knew he was on earth for a reason. He had a purpose to complete. He was there to help people understand better who God was. But his purpose was more than that, and we're going to see more of that as time goes on. But let's see what Jesus said to his parents. Verse 49. But why did you need to search, he asked. Didn't you know that I must be in my Father's house? But they didn't understand what he meant. Then he returned to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. And his mother stored all these things in her heart. Now, Jesus wasn't really too sure what the fuss was all about. What do you think he meant by, I must be in my Father's house? Jesus was in the temple, the place where God was, and people came there to worship God. God was his Father, and Jesus was there near to his Father. In talking with the religious leaders, even at 12 years old, Jesus was helping these people to understand more of who God was. Have you ever been so caught up in what you were doing, so involved that you just kind of lost all track of time, didn't realize it was supper time or lunchtime or something? Well, I don't know if that's really what happened with Jesus here. It might be. But you see, Jesus was focused on what he knew he would be doing as an adult. His parents really didn't get it at all. They didn't understand him, which makes sense. I mean, Jesus looked the same and in a lot of ways was the same as any other kid. But there was a difference. Unlike us, Jesus was perfect. He didn't demand his own way. He didn't disobey his parents. He was God. When he spoke to his parents, he wasn't mouthing off at them. He was just talking to them in a respectful way. He went home with them and he was obedient to them. Jesus still needed his parents. He still needed his family. He still needed to grow up before he did the job he was really coming to do. It was still too early for Jesus to do the work that God had sent him there for. Jesus really does know what it's like to grow up. He knows what it's like to be misunderstood. He knows what it's like to have to do what your parents say. And we can talk to him about those things. We can literally pray to him. That's what prayer is. We talk to God. And Jesus is in heaven right now, waiting to hear from us. And he wants to hear from us from whatever concerns and things we have. He would love us to talk to him about them. So like I said earlier, you can read about this story in Luke chapter 2, verses 41 and 51. And if you don't happen to have a Bible of your own, just look at the address on the screen, the email address, and let me know, and I'll make sure you get one. See you next time.